So I've used the word petitioning and ballot access a bunch of times, and maybe you're not even entirely sure what that means here. So what we'll do is divide this presentation into about 3 sections. The first one is talking about what is ballot access and what does petitioning mean. What am I even talking about here? And we'll talk about the state and local and federal laws that apply to ballot access. Just a brief overview. And then after that, we'll talk about how to do petitioning as an individual. So that's if you're interested in volunteering, what you can sort of expect, right? If you contact your state party or you contact your local Green candidate and say, I'm ready, I want to help, I want to be a petitioner, what does that mean? What sort of work would you do? What would you expect, right? So we'll talk about some advice on what to expect that first time you do it. And then our last section will be advice for coordinators. So this is folks who maybe want to take an extra step in volunteering for a candidate for office or for your state party. And this is where you're not just doing the petitioning yourself as an individual, but you're coordinating other volunteers. You're making sure that all of the volunteers are working together, that they have the supplies they need and all that stuff. And that's a very important role too, especially many of our states that have big ballot access requirements. And so we need, a big coordinated team in order to be able to do it successfully. So that's our 3 parts today. So the first thing to start with at the top of this slide here is ballot access. What do I mean when I say ballot access? What that means is we're referring to the laws that govern how candidates qualify for and apply to be placed on the election ballot. So there's laws in every state, 50 states plus DC. So 51 different elections happen. And the way the elections roll in the US is kind of interesting because even though we talk about the election, the midterm election, the presidential election, things like that, there actually is no one single election. What we have is actually 51 different elections that are all carried out according to their own laws and their own rules, and sometimes their own time frame. And the only thing they have in common is that, they all vote on election day in November, right? Particularly when it comes to presidential elections. Municipal elections could be their own, set some other day. But that's about it. So the right way to think about elections in the US is not that there's one election, but that there's actually 51 different elections. Each state has its own elections process that we have to be aware of. So when we talk about building the Green Party nationwide, we're really talking about building 51 state Green parties to make sure that each state is following its own laws and timeline and schedule and all that stuff. So that's part of the complexity here that we'll talk about. So that's ballot access. It's the rules that govern the election and how candidates apply to be on the ballot, how you get your name listed as a Green Party candidate on the ballot. There's different laws in different states. Petitioning is the process that we use to apply for ballot access, to get our candidates and our party on the ballot in those states. And it's referred to as petitioning because for the most part in most states, the main requirement is that we need voters to sign a petition. And we get a certain number of voters to sign a special petition that goes to the state government that basically says, these people want to see this candidate on the ballot in November or whenever the election is. And we meet all the requirements to be on the ballot, right? So it's a whole packet that includes, some legal forms, some affidavits that say, I declare that I can run for office. For example, sometimes offices have like an age limit. You might have to be 18 or 25 or 35 or something like that to run for office. So you fill out the form saying I'm qualified. You include the petition saying you have a certain number of people that want you on the ballot. And then in theory, you're approved to be on the ballot. But that process can be more complicated. So